So a while back, someone had asked me to do a preset around the Iron Maiden Brave New World album, and they just reiterated the same request on one of my more recent videos. And so I wanted to give it a try and spend some time here today going through this preset I've created that I think kind of gets close to that tone. So let's go ahead and start off kind of talking about the amp. So on that album, I believe both guitarists are using the Marshall JMP1 preamp. Obviously, there's no model for that in the Quad Cortex, but if you look at what that preamp does, it's trying to mimic, the sound of Marshall amps. And so I think got pretty close to a good tone that's in that Marshall realm, but is maybe doing some of the stuff that the preamp is doing. So we'll start off kind of with a straight ahead kind of super lead. So Plexi 100, I'm using the bright. You can see we've got the gain almost pegged. The bass is a little above half, the mid is a little less than half, treble is about 7, presence is 6.5. And so that's kind of the main core of the tone. And then I'm running that through a 4x12 Brit Silver B 70 watt. So this is kind of a good kind of high gain cabinet. And then the back end, we just have a hall reverb just for some very light ambience. Iron Maiden, to my ear, doesn't use a lot of effects. It's pretty dry. So if we go back to the amp, on its own, it sounds like this. So a nice, just straight ahead Marshall sound. But one of the things that the JMP preamp has that you can use is there's a setting on it to kind of really tighten up the bass. And I think they're using that capability on that preamp. And so what I put in front of it is a Freeman overdrive. And you can see here, I've got the gain and the bass and treble and the presence dialed all the way down. And so this pedal works kind of in an additive kind of way. So you can turn these off and it's not taking away anything. It's just not adding anything in that. And that's great because we don't want to use this for overdrive. I suppose you could use it to boost some of the gain if you wanted. But really what I want to use it for is this tight and trim capability. So to really kind of tighten up that bottom end and make that Marshall amp just kind of really tight. So again, if we try without it, the amp on its own. And if we turn it on, we get this. So you can hear it's making some somewhat subtle adjustments to the tone, really tightening up the bottom end and cutting off some of the looseness that comes with the Marshall. And then the other thing we do is on the back end, I've got a graphic equalizer. It's not a big difference here. All I'm doing is cutting a little bit of the low end, a little bit out of the middle to scoop it, and then some of the high end. But you can see it's not a lot. And then the output is adding a little volume back in because we're pulling some of the frequencies out. And so again, if we hear it without the equalizer, if we add it in, and so I think that's just a really good kind of bass rhythm sound for kind of these Iron Maiden tones. And so then the other thing I did is I used my dual delay kind of doubling trick. And what this is we got a dual delay. You can see we've got both delays on and really short delay times, 12 and 24 milliseconds, no feedback, so only getting one delay, and a little bit of modulation on the back end. And what this is doing is this is the best way I found within the Quad Cortex to get a really subtle kind of doubling effect. So again, with it off, it sounds like this. We turn it on, it sounds like this. So again, it's not super in your face, but it's adding a little bit of meat to it. And I think for the Iron Maiden, that works really well with that kind of big guitar sound that they have. And then for the lead, I'm leaving the doubler on. And all I'm really doing is I'm adjusting the trim and tightness a little bit, adding a little more output volume to the Freeman. So we're pushing the amp just a little bit more. And I'm adding in a little bit of mids and then just pushing the overall output levels just to boost the sound a little bit. And so that sounds like this. again, it's a lot like the rhythm sound. There's not much different. It's just a little bit more, a little fuller, maybe not quite as tight, and with a little more gain. So it's a little looser, but that works well for kind of the lead sounds. And then because Iron Maiden, obviously does a lot of harmony guitars between the two players, I added a few options for doing some harmonies. And so what I'm using is the mini voicer. And if you're not familiar with the mini voicer and the other pitch shift capabilities, I did a video a while back on all the pitch shift capabilities in the quad Cortex. I'll link to it here. But basically the mini voicer allows you to do a pitch shift and keep it in key. And so what I've done here is, you can see it says -3 E minor harmony. So I've only got one voice active, and I'm dropping the pitch a third, and I'm keeping it in E minor. So when you're playing those E minor riffs, you can have those nice kind of harmony leads. And of course, you can adjust it. So this one, I'm doing a very similar thing. All I'm doing though is I'm dropping in a fifth instead. So you can tailor this to specific songs. You can have specific intervals in specific keys. I think that lower third on the E minor works best for that kind of Iron Maiden double lead tone. And one thing I'll say is, you can notice here, I've got the mini voicer between the amp and the cabinet. I like that for doing these harmonies because you're harmonizing off the amp, but you're still giving the cabinet a chance to color both tones. I think sometimes if you put a mini voicer or a pitch shifter too far back, it starts sounding kind of synthetic or more synthetic. It's always going to sound a little synthetic. But I think putting it here between the amp and the cab kind of works really well. So that is this Iron Maiden preset. As always, I'll make this available on my Cortex Cloud account, and I'll remember to make it public this time so people aren't looking for it and can't find it. It'll be under the name Maiden Brave World, and download it, play around with it. Let me know what you think. For the player that requested it, let me know if you think I got in the realm that you were aiming for with this preset, and I hope you like it. Thanks for watching.